Hi, I'm Dennis Young. I'm founder of Issues in Education. I'm very happy to have with us today Susan Hilton, who's the Governmental Relations Director for Illinois Association of School Boards. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This is a major event here in Chicago.
Yes.
It's a 2018 III conference and covers a lot of issues, but really one of the really important issues has to do with giving an update on the federal programs. And I understand you've had a lot of effort, but as a result, a lot of successes, and you've raised some funds.
Definitely.
Tell us about that.
Sure. We've really increased our advocacy at the federal level in the past few years. It seems like federal advocacy is really far away from local districts, but it is really important because those programs affect local districts just as much as anything at the state level. When we go to Washington, D.C., we really advocate for more funding because there's a lot of mandates that come from D.C. and we're expected to provide those programs, and so we need them to be funding what they're providing. And I would say two of the biggest funding sources that we advocate for are Title I and IDEA. We feel like those programs are the most, they affect more districts than any other federal dollars. So obviously there's other federal dollars and federal programs out there, but Title I helps the most economically disadvantaged kids who we all know through a lot of data struggle a little bit more because of their situations at home. And then IDEA is a huge cost driver in school districts. It's a significant mandate. When they passed IDEA years and years ago, the federal government promised 40% funding. And at the most, I believe it's been 13%.
My gosh.
So the school district is still required to provide those services. So they have to come up with the funds from elsewhere in their budget, from other revenue sources. So those are really significant programs we advocate for.
So I understand you've been very successful. What is the total dollars that you've been able to procure?
Sure. So we had an increase in fiscal year 18, and then in fiscal year 19 we also had an increase, which is significant to say because for about a decade it was about flat funding. And so in fiscal year 19, the overall K through 12 budget had an increase of about $299 million.
My gosh.
So which is a pretty big deal, especially when it was a Republican-controlled House, Senate, and presidency. It was successful. So.
Well, I know everybody appreciates all the efforts that you put into it. You know, a couple other issues dealing with federal funding is school nutrition. And there's been a lot in the press about school nutrition. Certainly the issue about healthy eating. And I know not all kids like healthy eating if it doesn't taste good.
Right.
So you might share what your experience has been with trying to make that a successful program for everybody.
Sure. So everybody does believe that children should eat healthy. Nobody disagrees with that. But the changes that were put in place a number of years ago with the Healthy Kids,
We got it.
So with that program, they implemented very strict regulations on what could and could not be provided to children, what could and could not be used to even season the food. And a lot of problems were created because of those regulations where there is significant what they're calling plate waste, and also kids just aren't eating it. You know, another issue with it is it's a one-size-fits-all. So I know I have children, and my one son is in middle school. There's a really big range of sizes of children in middle school because of growth patterns.
Yeah.
But it's very strictly regulated how many calories. And so for a small girl, the calorie count that's allowed could be sufficient. But for a very tall boy who could be in sports and burning a lot of calories in a growth spurt, the set number of calories probably isn't sufficient for them. And so they're buying 2 or 3 meals in order, and it is just so heavily regulated. So again, I want to talk about the plate waste. School districts are filling dumpsters, and they're serving children, little children, whole apples, which sounds great, right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to feed a kid an apple? But a 7-year-old has a really hard time managing a whole apple. They take one bite out of it, they throw it in the garbage.
Right.
And they have to take everything that's provided, whether they're going to consume it or not. So milk was an issue. So there are some children who cannot consume milk because they're lactose intolerant.
Right.
Didn't matter. They
Right.
had to take the milk and throw it in the garbage. They
Wow.
couldn't take it and give it back. They had to. It's just.
Wow.
So it is a great idea to feed kids healthy foods, but if we're wasting it and then the kids are going away hungry, what purpose is that serving? We need to ensure that school districts have the flexibility, because one of the things we advocate for at our association is local control. Who knows better what the children in their community need than the locally elected school board members?
Sure.
And when we are setting standards for every child in the entire United States based on somebody's brilliant idea in Washington, D.C., it just doesn't work at the local level.
I would also think just the cultural aspect of, depending on what your I guess, American food versus Spanish food versus Oriental food.
Absolutely.
It's a big issue. Well, what do you see on the horizon for federal programs? Do you think it's going to pick up? Do you think it's going to realign itself?
You know, I know for the school nutrition program, just as an example, the President Trump's administration has given a lot of flexibilities to school districts through rules. Those are temporary. And so we are advocating for permanent changes with those flexibilities. So that is appreciated, and we've been grateful for that, but we need that to be permanent. I would say on the horizon for education issues, something we're going to be pushing for is a reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So IDEA talked about it before. Funding is a huge issue. They promised 40%. They funded it about 13 in a good year.
Wow.
The mandates are significant, and there really needs to be it's been the same law in place for many, many years now, and times change. We need to rethink things every once in a while and see what's working, see what's not working. But I would say the cost is just such a significant factor.